So let's look at a couple examples of this describing polynomials, this leading coefficient test. Okay, remember we said we're going to look at from an equation and then we're going to look at from a graph. Remember, from an equation we had two different forms of the equation. We have a standard form and we have a factored form. Standard form is pretty easy to describe because it's already got everything I need. I don't need to do any math. Okay, so looking at my equation, remember, for the leading coefficient test, we need to grab the highest exponent and the number in front. So I can immediately see what the a is and what the n is just by looking. Now, it doesn't mean that they're always going to put it in order. I'm still going to look at the highest exponent and the number in front. So let's look at an example there. So let's say that we had the example f of x is 5x to the fourth plus 7x squared minus 2x plus 9. All right, and we wanted to describe this polynomial. So to describe the polynomial, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the leading coefficient, and it's leading because the 4 is the highest exponent. And then I'm going to grab the 5 because it's the number in front. Okay, so I'm going to have my a is 5 here, and my n is 4. Okay. So let's start off by just giving this a name. So the first thing that we can do is we can name this as a 4th degree polynomial. Okay, remember it's what my n is. Then we can say, well, it's going to have 4 possible rational solutions. And I could say solutions, I could say roots, I could say x-intercepts. They would all be the same thing. Okay. Then I could say that there are going to be 3 possible turning points. Remember, I get the turning points by taking 1 away, doing that n minus 1. Okay. So we haven't really done any math yet. We haven't really done much thought, actually. So now I have to think about, what is that end behavior going to look like? So my end behavior, I'm going to now take into consideration the a and the n. So if I look at the a, I notice that the a is going to be a positive number, and the n is going to be even. Okay. The way I remember that I'm looking for n to be even or odd. That's how I remember it. Even, or is it odd, goes with my n. Okay. So now that I know that I have something positive and even, I'm going to think back and remember those 4 scenarios. So I remember that an even positive is going to be up, up. So we could describe that as that it's going to rise to the right, and it's going to rise to the left. Okay. So when I'm looking at standard form, I focus on the highest exponent and the number in front. And then I can go describe everything I know about it. Okay. Now, if I'm looking in factored form, the good thing about factored form is that here in a little bit when we try to find our solutions, it's so much easier to find the solutions. However, to describe it, I'm going to have to do a little bit of thought here. Not too much, just a little bit. What I do notice is that it already does have the a. So I can immediately tell what the a is because it's still in front of the equation. However, I cannot see what the n is. So what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to count all of the factors up, meaning that I'm going to have to take every single exponent or every single x and add it together. So let's look at an example of what that's going to look like, because I think it's a little bit easier when you see an example. So let's say that we had the number -2, x plus 5 squared, x minus 1, and then x plus 3 to the 4. All right, so when I'm looking at this, I can immediately tell, okay, well, my a is -2. Easy. All right, but I don't know what the n is. So to be able to get what the n is, I'm actually going to have to take everything that's got an x. So this has an x, but there's no number there. That means that there's a 1. Just like in a regular equation, say we had y equals x plus 9, there's an imaginary 1 sitting out there because there's 1x. So there's a 1 sitting out here if there's nothing there. So I'm going to take this 2 plus this 1 plus this 4, which means that my highest exponent, when I add them all together, is going to equal 7. So this n is going to be 7. Okay. So now that I've got my a and my n, I can do exactly what we just did a minute ago. Super easy. It's going to be a 7th degree polynomial. I'm just going to abbreviate here. I'm going to have 7 possible solutions. I'm going to have 6 possible turning points. And then my end behavior, if I'm looking at a -2, so this is now negative and odd. So a negative odd, I'm going to think back to my different scenarios. Negative odd is going to be up to down. That's why we want to definitely memorize those things, which means it's going to rise to the left and it's going to fall to the right. Okay. So the describing is not the issue when we're looking at factored form. It's really making sure that we get the n correct. So I want to do one more where we just find the a and the n to make sure that we really understand what's happening. So let's say that we had 3x, x plus 4, x minus 2 cubed. Okay? So when I look at this scenario, I can again identify the a, nice and easy. It's just at the very beginning. Okay, a, perfect. Now I want to go and I want to find my n, my highest exponents. So remember, if there's nothing there, there is a 1. Even out in front, see this has the variable x, which means I should put a 1 there. Notice in the last one, I did not put anything here because the -2 didn't have an x to go with it. I'm only counting up the x's. So I've got 1x here, I've got 1x here, and I've got 3 x's here. So I'm going to say 3 plus 1 plus 1 is going to give me an n of 5. Okay, so even the variable in the beginning, it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm just going to count up how many sets of parentheses. That's not what it is. I'm counting up every single variable to become my n. So this one, I'm not going to write it down, but we can kind of talk through it. It would be a 5th degree polynomial with 5 possible solutions and 4 possible turning points. My n behavior, I'm positive and odd, so it would be down to up. So I'm going to fall to the left and rise to the right.